Okay, I think most of us have arrived already. So again, a warm welcome from my side to everyone who has joined us today. Today we will talk about Gaia X. We will give you a short status update on the project itself, but also talk about the opportunities for data centers today. My name is Emma. I'm working with the Eco Association of the Internet Industry in Germany, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today. So before we dive into the topic, maybe I can give you some more details on how you can participate in today's webinar. So first of all, I would kindly like to ask you to make sure that your microphone is muted for the whole duration of the webinar. Also make sure that your camera is switched off. And if you have any questions during today's presentations, I would like to invite you to submit your questions via the chat box in the GoToMeeting control panel. And I will make sure that we answer all your questions at the end of today's webinar. And for your information, this webinar is being recorded right now. So if you miss anything, don't worry. We will make sure that you will receive an on-demand recording afterwards. Okay, so now I would like to introduce to you our speakers for today. We have three great speakers with us. First off, it's Stijn Grove. Stijn Grove is the Managing Director of the Dutch Data Center Association, and he will give us a short introduction into the topic in just a few moments. And next on, we have Andreas Weiss with us. Andreas is the Head of Digital Business Models at ECO, and today he will give us a short update on the Gaia X project, but also talk about the opportunities for data centers. And last but not least, we also have Jesse with us. Welcome, Jesse. Jesse is a senior business consultant at TNO, and he will talk about the role of TNO in the Gaia X project today. And now, without further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming Stijn, and I will hand over to you, Stijn.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody to this webinar, and very much thank you all for my co-organizers to participate in this, especially Andreas and Jesse. Yeah, a short introduction from me. My name is Stijn Grove. I'm Managing Director for the Dutch Data Center Association. We're the national trade association for data centers in the Netherlands and digital, and also heading the Digital Gateway to Europe organization, promoting the digital hub of the Netherlands. Established 2014, voice of the industry. We have around 90+% of the data center operators in our organization and the data center ecosystem. We focus really on energy and sustainability, on education, employment, and on the digital economy and data hub. But also our position as the foundation for our digital economy, which becomes more and more important every day. If you look at, and the next slide, please. If you look at the data centers, if you look at the Dutch or the foundation of our economy is more and more a digital foundation. You see that in the Netherlands, there are every 30 kilometers there's a data center near you. It's spread around the country, and especially last couple of months, everybody enjoyed working from home and working from a data center. And with that also comes the notice that the digital economy is the economy, and that we are able to continue our economy due to that very important digital infrastructure, and also everything that's surrounding it, the data infrastructure. So how secure is my data? How well is my data maintained? And that is something of very great importance. And with that, it's also very good that there are now initiatives also to look at it from a European perspective, looking at this industry, looking at the digital society that we're in. We need to also create a new rule book, a new way how we operate, how we work with data. And that's why I'm very interested and also very interested. I think it's a good initiative that there's now initiative by of the Gaia X initiative, as we need to more and more explore the way how we work with data, how it's secured, how it's what the rules are, and based on really also the European values that we have. If you look at like the way we use data and which companies are involved in that, we should also take matters in our own head. And therefore, I'm very happy that this initiative is there, and we fully support it. It needs to also be a real European initiative, and that's what the intention also is. So for our industry, I think it's very important to be part of this, and therefore we are very happy to organize also this webinar, as we are very close, and we're also doing our hosting with our customers that do cloud services and the cloud services that we do ourselves. So this is a short introduction. I'm very interested in what Andreas has to say. So without further ado, I would like to give the word to Andreas to talk about more about the Gaia X initiative and where we are and what is needed for the next steps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stein, about the introduction and setting the scene for the topic of Gaia X and the Dutch data center scenery. I'm going to bring you now some background information about Gaia X with a key message, and also provide you some insights how to be part of this initiative from the Netherlands. As we had already some exchanges in the past, the first one was in the Embassy of the Netherlands in Berlin, where we had a kickoff session back in end of January, and then we had a follow-up session with some associations. Stein, can you just mute yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you. And further on, we had a session with the French and German ministry about Gaia X, 3-hour session, very intensive, also with participation of TNO. Yeah, now we have to move into the next phase after we had the launch on the 4th of June with all the background papers, and all of you who are interested to make a deep dive, just I will lead you to the website where you can find all the material. So for today, I would like to bring you a little bit the high-level story. Why do we need Gaia X, and what is the motivation behind it? And we are really addressing the challenges which are in place for the European digital economy. One of these are, for example, the requirement to find processing locations on a decentralized level. And as you've seen out of the map from Stein, it is really necessary to have a distributed approach of different data centers, also up to the edge processing, which is, for example, very important for the industry to collect data out of industrial IoT, which is then the typical edge processing, and then move this forward into the value chain up to data spaces and, for example, the usage of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. And therefore, we need this distributed approach. But on the other side, we see a lack of transparency about the sovereignty with these data. And you might imagine that a lot of companies are quite concerned when they put the data into a third-party environment or allow them for further follow-up processing on data spaces. Who is still the controller of the data? And in some extent, even if it is non-personal data, it is a level of intellectual property. So we need such a level of transparency about the processing data and the storage of data within the infrastructure layer. Also, a challenge is then to match data which are collected into data spaces with a reasonable level of specification of the ontology. This has to be managed also to provide interoperability of data. We have to face multiple technology stacks, and even in Europe, with some harmonization for a digital single market, we have local rules, local regulation, and there might be also some requirements for regulated sectors like healthcare or finance sector to keep data in certain countries, not just in certain regions. And this has to be addressed. So you need to be very clear where is your data located. In terms of the interoperability, we have still a lot of challenges, although there are some initiatives like Fireware and so on to provide APIs to applications. There's still a lot to do to support the idea of free flow of data as well as common data spaces. And and then if you face all these requirements and you are facing then the challenge to find mutual agreements with each of the stakeholders in terms of clarification on regulation of contracts and so on, this is a nightmare. And therefore, we think Gaia X is the right platform to bring all stakeholders together, to harmonize the regulatory framework and to find common rules and common code of conduct and so on, and also common technology to work towards a distributed federated ecosystem for infrastructure and data. So looking at this, we really, Gaia X aims to provide this infrastructure, this digital infrastructure, most to drive innovation in the European economy. So this is really the high level objective here. And this is in conjunction with the term of data sovereignty to keep, to apply mechanism to keep the control of the data, also to reduce the dependencies to various or few providers, to have more choice, to offer also a plan B. So just say it simple, to avoid or reduce the level of vendor lock-in, and to increase transparency and attractiveness of digital services, to support the European economy to make the next steps into the monetization of data and usage of modern digital technologies. This is then addressed with a combination of a sovereign infrastructure together in conjunction with a sovereign data exchange layer. And in between, we have this federation layer, which is in respect to EU policies, code of conduct, and the general regulation which applies for Europe and the European standards. Let me say like GDPR and EU Cybersecurity Act and certification schemes and so on. So moving forward, this is then a more detailed picture, and you see on the lower level then the infrastructure layer, and this is the mix of network and interconnection providers, cloud service providers, high performance computing providers, specific sector clouds, edge, and of course, all those who are providing the housing and, for example, data center, they are already in some extent network and interconnection providers, and they are hosting cloud services or they are part of sector-specific clouds. And in some extent, they are also managing edge environments as well. So this is the lower part, the infrastructure ecosystem. And on the upper part, we have then the data spaces. And those who follow the announcements of the European Commission about the data strategy back in mid of February, you might have heard about the various data spaces on a sector-specific level to be built. And there's also a funding scheme up to 2 billion euro to move forward into this direction. And on top of these various data spaces, you can see then the smart services like AI, IoT, analytics, automation, big data, and whatever is reasonable in this area. And on top of this, then you have finally the business case. So this is the X of Gaia X, the infrastructure with the data ecosystem and the federated services in between to provide identity and trust, sovereign data exchange, a federated catalog for all the providers and their services, also the nodes, which is then finally data centers, for example, and to address all the compliance requirements which are relevant for the user community. We have already a strong alliance, and let me say there is no blueprint from Gaia X, but looking into the last 12 months, it is quite impressive that we have already 500 participants out of 300 companies and organizations who are working pro bono on this concept. 3 or 4 out of 4 of these organizations are on the level of SMEs, and we have a wide range of different sectors, industries like mobility, energy, manufacturing, finance, and so on. So any kind from large companies up to the public sector is currently involved in this evolvement. And going back to the infrastructure layer again, so what we really want to address is to provide an infrastructure ecosystem with a reasonable level of portability and interoperability between the network and interconnection providers and the various cloud flavors up to the edge, as I said, to find, combine, and connect those services, which is also a level of orchestration within the federation of the systems, and really support the distributed use cases, which is from an on-premise setup up to a central cloud or area processing of data. And we need to address, of course, a complete stack, including the infrastructure, the network and interconnection requirements, and the distribution. And therefore, Gaia X is not aiming to build new standards or to start from scratch. First and foremost, we are looking for existing standards which are applicable, which are aligned with the European requirements, and then go from there and bring these pieces together. So this is really part of this key activity with the Federation of the Systems to support the interoperability approach, although everyone is probably working with different technology stacks and identify the level of harmonization here. And as I said, in between, we have the federation services with a federated identity and trust mechanism. And of course, with the paradigm security and privacy by design, with a rule book, which is currently under construction, and everything, just to indicate, everything which is now addressed within this green area is open source. So there's a clear understanding that this is a community-driven approach, and that everyone has insight into this development and the design of these services, and is allowed to make use of these services in his own federation. And this is currently in the specification phase, and very soon there's a plan to start the development of these services within the community in conjunction with other stakeholders. And this is then in between these 2 layers of infrastructure and data ecosystem, and this allows everyone to build his own federation of a Gaia X ecosystem, which can then be for automotive, for logistics, supply chain management, and whatever is reasonable. So about the next steps to get a level of maturity, there's a plan to build a Gaia X Foundation as an association, international sans but lucrative, IESBL. The foundation will be done in Belgium as I said, as an association, non-profit association. And with the launch on the June 4th, we have already 22 stakeholders out of Germany and France who are currently moving forward with the foundation. They are currently assembling the article of association, the bylaws, the policies, also the membership fee structures and the membership forms. And then everyone who is interested to join the Gaia X Foundation can apply for it, and everyone who is registered up to end of September will be also announced as a kind of day 1 member of the Gaia X Foundation. And we plan to have this foundation in operation by end of this year. It takes around 3 months by the Belgium King to approve this application of the association. And further on, and this is probably the most interesting development for today, there's a plan to build up Gaia X hubs, either on the country level or on the sector level. I think we are really planning now, aiming to start on a country level. Our current working structure in Germany is now in the transformation to a German Gaia X hub. And hopefully we will see similar developments in the Netherlands and France, but we're also talking to Spain, to Italy, to Estonia, to Denmark, and Finland, and so on. So there's a lot of interest to join this initiative right now. So what is currently under consideration is to coordinate these hubs then together as a kind of connecting all these European hubs together, to find a coordination center for the networking between the hubs. And we need to find an appropriate balance for a general alignment, especially on the technical thread, but on the other side, each of the countries, each of the economies have other key objectives, and they should take care about their own community without being constrained by a European head association. But to support this networking and also then include this with the upcoming integration or building of the data spaces as part of the EU strategy, this would then be a good synergy here. Okay, the hub should then be a kind of SPOC, a single point of contact, and to bundle national initiatives in a respective domain, for example. Feel free to organize it and to gain some traction on this topic. It should be also then the connection point to other hubs in the European nations and also beyond. So Gaia X, of course, is a European initiative. We are very clear Gaia X can be managed on a worldwide base. So there is no constraint that we will see in the near future a Gaia X hub in Brazil, in Turkey, and in Indonesia, whatever. We have already exchanges with Japan and South Korea with high interest. I'm pretty sure there is also some agreement that Europe is in terms of governance and data handling, a safe harbor also for other nations. And therefore, these hubs should then represent the interests of the national companies and organizations, for example, like this group of the Data Center Association. They should present information about their developments, exchange with other hubs, and to find synergies. And of course, we need to establish expert tribes to consolidate the requirements and the demonstrators, because this is now the next phase after the development or in parallel to the development of the federation services to showcase then various demonstrators in real life scenarios. But on the other side, they should be able to work independently and develop according to their specific needs to keep some openness, because this is then really the incubation of new ideas. Yeah, everyone is invited to be part of this ecosystem. The only thing you have to do is to send a mail, drop a mail to contact@data-infrastructure.eu. You will get a confirmation, and right now we have launched a set of onboarding webinars, which is around 1 hour, where you get all the details, how to cooperate, how to work together, which tools are in place, and also to help you for your assignment into the various working groups within the technical committee. For example, for product and services, for the nodes or the data center operations and infrastructure operations, for interconnection and storage and computing area, or compliance. And there we also have some subgroups around identity management to set up a sovereign cloud stack on open source, and so on and so on. So therefore, you just apply for one of these activities if you want to contribute directly into the Gaia X network.
We can start answering the questions of the attendees right now. There are some questions that were submitted in the during your presentation. So the first one, I guess, is for you, Andreas. Someone is asking, who is defined as an SME in this alliance?
No, I'm unmuted. We are following strictly the EU definition. One SME is at least 43 million euro turnaround, or up to 43 million turnaround, or 250 employees. So there's a standardized EU definition for smaller media enterprises.
Okay, thank you. Next one. Someone is asking, I see the UK is also part of the system. Will this alter after the Brexit?
No, there's no need. It is not a EU initiative. It is a European initiative, first and foremost. And even there are a lot of companies from Japan, from South Korea, from China, and from the US already onboarded into the Gaia X specification. The key thing here is that Gaia X should keep a reasonable European footprint. We might discuss what does it mean European? Is it solely EU? I don't think so, because we are also in relationship with Norway, with Switzerland, with other countries who are not no official EU members. But of course, the EU standards are of relevance. As I said, GDPR, EU Cybersecurity Act. So the rules in the governments should be clearly aligned to the EU standards. Let me say it this way. But this does not exclude any non-EU stakeholders or activities, but they have to follow the same rules. So this is the message here behind. And to be honest, of course, there's a lot of space for discussion, but this is a clear objective of this initiative to support the European economy according to European standards. This is the message behind it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, next one. Someone is asking, how would this affect the transfer of data between data centers outside of Europe and data centers in Europe? Would there be a need to harmonize the data taxonomy of rules for data transfer into and out of Europe data centers?
Well, first of all, nothing changes just by Gaia X. It is all the rules which are currently in place are still the same. But Gaia X is helping to harmonize these requirements and to provide a kind of model contract clauses and also a kind of transparency and also approval that these rules are aligned and are satisfied by the providers. For now, I think part of this question should be addressed to those who are taking care about the data management, like the Data Center Coalition, as mentioned by Jesse, or the International Data Space Association, who are working now towards these data sharing approach and also the data spaces. And this is now something which is under construction also from the EU Commission to build up such data spaces. And there's not yet a clear specification about the rules to which extent data spaces can be handled across borders, but at least within the scope of the European Union and within the regulation of GDPR, a free flow of data, and a common digital single market, there will be a level of harmonization. And of course, we don't see the same requirements as we see now for GDPR, but even here we identified or we realized that GDPR is also a blueprint for non-EU countries like California. They applied this rules also in their legislation. And yeah, this can be also a gold standard for the future. I don't want to overemphasize this topic, but we have to talk it. And I think therefore we need this community approach. We need to talk about, requirements. I think for the Dutch sector, logistics is very important, and taking care about supply chains cross over the world is a challenge. And to find some guidance and also a harmonized technology approach to bring these value chains together and to build up smart application is valuable.
Thank you so much. Okay, there's one more question regarding the Gaia X hubs. To understand, these hubs will be campuses of data centers which take a leadership role in Gaia X standards, or offshoots of association members.
But first of hubs, we have to differentiate. When we talk about the data centers by themselves within the Gaia X context, these are kind of nodes with a geographic location. Like any other kind of nodes, like an edge container or a 5G concentrator, whatever. But they have a geolocation, and which is of relevance when we want to identify where the data resides and what kind of regulation is applicable or which law is applicable on this data. The data centers are finally the connection point for all the services inside, which are hosted and managed within the data centers. But on the other side, the service can be distributed cross over multiple data centers. So this is the level of complexity where we find appropriate solutions. And also in terms of monitoring the residence of data and the residence of services and the outreach of service in conjunction with a legal framework and contractual recommendations and code of conduct, then we provide added value to the customers who are really concerned about such questions and who really need to gain some transparency. And currently there's a mix of different legal entities. For example, just facing the situation, you are handing over your data to a service provider who is getting bankrupted. Typically, such service providers are hosted within the data centers, which are two different legal entities. So if so you have the situation, your initial contract partner is not available, but the data resides in a third-party environment. And just taking care about such scenarios and to provide guidance and also support to get hold of the data, which is a key asset of a customer, is of relevance here.
One addition, if you're talking to hubs and data centers, if you look to the cooperation within the Dutch industry, I would like to invite everyone in the digital infrastructure to form the Dutch Gaia X hub from an organization point of view, where the data centers have an important role in the ecosystem. So if there is coming a coalition, I would like also to invite the data centers to take a lead there because they have an important role in the total context.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Who has responsibility for the overarching compliance and assurance for the whole ecosystem as it is being developed and run as a live capability? Who is the governance board?
Well, first and foremost, this will be concentrated in the Gaia X entity. So they are building up these structures. They provide the contractual elements. Also, they are responsible to provide the core federation services with a catalog and also to provide appropriate legal framework to comply with the Gaia X rules. So this really is why it is of relevance to be part of this entity and to be part of this governance. Of course, there's also a steering by the national authorities and the governments because they are already interested in this concept and they want to make use of the Gaia X standards also in the public sector as well. So this is currently under construction right now, and I think by end of the year we will have a pretty clear picture about these environments, because currently now we transform the Gaia X governance and the work structures from a, let me say, initial German Franco initiative to a more international approach. And of course, Gaia X hubs are of highest relevance in this ecosystem. To provide feedback, interaction, and to bring the views of the customers as well as of the providers into this governance approach.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Does Gaia X use the existing infrastructure or will it in time invest in new infrastructure?
Well, the first principle, and there was a lot of disinformation, it is not a new hyperscaler. It is also not one entity who is managing a European cloud infrastructure. It is really just bring existing forces together, overcome the fragmentation, and to some extent create a new level playing field, because there's quite a reasonable dominance by the hyperscalers because they provide good services. But on the other side, we want to target the innovation space, and we want to keep the European industry as part of this value ecosystem for the future. And therefore, I think it's really necessary to join forces, as we do right now, to bring all the stakeholders together, to work towards common objectives. On the other side, to keep everyone the space to build their own priorities. And this is then finally the sense of such a hub, to join forces, to join interests, and to bring this up to the entity, to design a new level of a European digital ecosystem. And therefore,
Okay.
and as far as I know, within the data strategy, yeah, there's some investment into digital infrastructures, mainly on the connection side, as far as I know. And also we need appropriate framing conditions to build up new data centers. I heard about all the constraints you're facing now in the Amsterdam area and all the discussions about the Green Deal and so on. So this is something where we have to provide more transparency as well. Just saying the data center consumption in terms of energy is raising, yeah, but on the other side, it helps to reduce other consumptions, and just by changing from flight to a video conference, I think this is really a reasonable positive effect for the carbon footprint here in Europe.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Who is the lead of the Gaia X project? Is this the German and French government, or are there entrepreneurs the drivers behind this Gaia X?
It's very clear Gaia X is from the economy for the economy. So for the time being, the German government is a kind of incubator. They host some infrastructure, they provide resources to build up the community, and within the next 1 or 2 years, everything should be managed solely via the entity by the entrepreneurs and by the companies who are part of this entity. Also in exchange with associations who are representing communities, and we need to discuss what level of involvement is given to the governments in the future. As they are interested in terms of public sector services, I think they are also seen as relevant stakeholders, and it is a kind of bottom-up strategy here. Because it is not driven by the European Commission, it is driven by the countries on a voluntary mode, with the support of the current stakeholders out of Germany and France. But I'm pretty sure the Dutch government is also interested to support this initiative. But of course, they have to keep their interests in scope, and therefore I think it's of relevance to keep this exchange and to align all the different interests into one common activity. But again, it is not a governmental initiative. It is also not a funding initiative. There will be some funding to support the further development, but it doesn't make sense to bring anything up to the front without reasonable acceptance by the consumers. And we also need to address, it is not just another cloud ecosystem, because this is too simple and this is not competitive. Cloud is already commodity. We really need to apply or to bring everything up to the innovative services where you really have new values. Just to recap here, we had a study back in November last year about the usage of AI, and just with a consequent usage of artificial intelligence within the German economy, you can raise the gross product up to 13% by 2025. So there's a huge potential, around 500 billion euro, to raise the economy, and this is really what we need to address. It's not just another cloud provider here.
And if you look to the Dutch market, the Dutch government is following Gaia X and is in contact on political level, but is looking to the Dutch industry, how they can organize themselves and participate as an industry within the Gaia X developments.
Okay, thank you. Last 2 questions, I guess. First one, how does Gaia X relate to Géant, if I pronounce it the right way, like open clouds for research environments?
Well, there's some exchange. There is not a full alignment so far because Gion is for research, and we are talking about the economy by itself. There are different priorities. I think GIA is in place, but in the near future there will be reasonable synergies with such frameworks, and I think this, but this should be managed via the EU Commission and all the stakeholders from there. So to be honest, for the time being, it is not on highest priority, but we will see this alignment in the near future.
Yeah, and the members of Gaia, for instance, SurfNet in the Dutch market is also interested to play a role within the Dutch Gaia X development as a part of the Dutch digital infrastructure industry.
Okay, last question for today's webinar. Can you see value in a European IPCEI that elaborates on the Gaia X initiative on an officially European Commission basis?
Well, at least I can say for now, European Commission is fully engaged. They are fully informed regularly. But on the other side, they really would like to see that there is some reasonable momentum by the countries, which happens right now. And I think by end of this year, there will be a clear strategy. Gaia X will be part of the strategy. It's already named in the EU strategy in February, but wait and see up to end of this year. Right now, they are fighting around budgets, around the New Horizon package, and as far as I know, there is a reasonable alignment to be that Gaia X is part of the future EU strategy, and let's go from there. There are a lot of talks running right now, and this will be continued. And also with the German presidency, I think Gaia X will be taken on the floor and to be addressed also on a European level.
Okay, thank you so much. So I guess we've reached the end of today's webinar. I would like to thank our speakers, Jesse, Andreas, Stein. Thank you so much for taking the time to give us an update on the project. And I guess on behalf of the Dutch Data Center Association, the Eco Association, and of course, Tino, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. And I hope we will meet again in one of our upcoming webinars, and have a nice day and stay safe.